This is DJRF, and you're listening to Country Lunch. And today we're here with Paleo Mountain Man and Budcat7. Are you on the line there, Budcat? Tell us.
This is Budcat7 from Stonewall Research.
Okay. And your website?
It's you can find it on YouTube or Stonewall. Just type in Stonewall Research, 3 separate words, and Budcat7, and you could get right to my YouTube page.
We were just talking with Harry Hubbard. It sounds very interesting, some of the things he's into.
It was interesting having Harry on. He's a friend to the channel. He's a friend to, he subs for Jimmy's channel too. So, you know, it's interesting to have him on and see what he had to say. And naturally, while I was listening to the broadcast, I was pacing the floor like a caged tiger because I had so much to say while you guys were having discussion there. Like, for instance, how did they move the big stone? Well, I can tell you, you know, my thoughts about it. If you're 10 or 12 or 14 feet tall and have the strength of an elephant, well, that's not going to be much of a problem. And by the way, Kevin Gardner, who family has been building stone walls, Kevin Gardner from Maine, his family's been building stone walls for generations. He says, in his expert opinion, that the average size of the stones in the archaic stone walls is 65 to 75 pounds.
Wow.
So, going back to you guys' conversation, you know, they often say that the farmers had their children out there with them, helping them build the stone walls, which, you know, on the face of it is just absurd because you're not going to have kids lifting 65 and 75 pounds stones and taking the risk of hurting themselves, which is very easy to do. Stone wall building is a very
well, Dave,
dangerous
Giants had big
work.
kids, didn't they?
Excuse me?
Didn't Giants have really big kids?
Yeah, they had kids the size of 6'5".
I have
man,
my
you know,
kids
I mean,
out there doing it. Heck.
Yeah, the Giants had their kids out doing it, but the farmers,
Not
the
the farmers,
settlers
yeah.
and farmers,
Right.
they didn't have their kids out there
Well,
doing
I
it.
think
First
the
of all,
Giants were growing giant ears of corn. I know that. So they
Yeah.
were farmers too. See, there's
well, they were clearing the fields,
That's
and I
another
know
mystery.
you guys.
Right.
You guys came upon that clearing the fields. How did they do that? Well, it's very simple. They burned them. That's how they were doing it.
right.
And then the
That sounds
native
right.
peoples carried on with that tradition afterwards. They seldom used it. Yeah, they cleared the fields by burning them, and you know the Native Americans carried on that tradition. So that was, you know, very seldom did they take out an axe to cut down a tree. They didn't need to do that. They just burned the forest. And whereas these walls may have served as fire breaks, but that was only one of their purposes. And again, from my own research and my own studies, and, you know, I have a background in engineering and architecture and industrial engineering and industrial architecture, the walls that have no openings in them, okay, and that Harry was saying, if you were a giant, you could step right over them, no problem, 2-3 foot walls, you wouldn't have an issue stepping over them. But the closed-in wall, the areas where it's completely closed in and there's no opening, it's just an obvious indication that says, you know, without speaking a word, authorized personnel only, okay? So evidently there was stuff inside of these closed walls areas that they didn't want other people to touch. So let's say, for example, you have a society, a large society, and you have this logistics problem where you have to feed all these people. You have communal farming going on, communal resource gathering, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have a certain level of organization, basically what you're going to have is a free-for-all, okay? So you're going to have people wandering into the farm field just picking corn and vegetables willy-nilly and taking as much as they want and, you know, not leaving any for anybody else. So That's not how it was. We have evidence of
Could it-
this from the Iroquois.
Could it be, Dave,
know.
that if you enclose the field in, let's say, with a wall with no openings, and you burnt on the inside of that, you
Right.
could contain the fire inside there, and you could contain the field inside. You burn that.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That's
Absolutely, but my point is the level of organization and sophistication of these societies would indicate what the wall's purposes might be for. And I think what you had when you have a large, first of all, it's interesting what Harry said. Where are all these people buried? Because it's obvious that these people had a large civilization and therefore a lot of people. So there must be a lot of people still underground there in the Northeast. They haven't found a whole lot of skeletons, or at least that we know about. But where did all these people go? So that's one issue. But evidently there was, just the indication of the proliferation of the walls indicates a very high population. So if you have a high population and you need to feed them, you need a high level of organization and distribution. Okay, so the walls are part of that whole network there, where they kept all of this stuff. Obviously, maize was one thing they had. Squash was another thing they had. Beans were another thing they had. Timber was something that they used on a daily basis. Furs, minerals, copper were other things that they dealt with. Okay, so if you're gathering up that stuff in large quantities, you're going to need a place to put it, and where you have access to it, easy access to it. So part of the wall's construction has a lot to do with this material and where they put it and where they stored it. Again, you just couldn't have people willy-nilly running around grabbing food whenever they wanted and how much they wanted.
Where do you think they were growing?
That at all.
What do you think they were growing?
Oh, they were probably growing the maize, and they were probably growing squash, beans, with other, growing things. This is a thing with the whole hunter-gatherer theory and all that kind of stuff. This is the easiest thing in the world, guys, okay? You and I are sitting down. We went into the forest. We got ourselves some melons. Now we're sitting down eating them, and we're spitting out the pits on the ground, okay? Several weeks later, we go back to the same place, and we notice that the pits we spit on the ground are now starting to sprout and grow. Do I have to really explain it to anybody? This is the easiest thing for anybody to see in the world. It's just the fact that the notion that these people were strictly hunter-gatherers is ridiculous, just ridiculous. If you can't tell that planting a seed in the ground is going to grow into the plant that makes the food that you eat all the time, you really got to be stupid. And I don't think these people were that stupid. So they figured out how to grow. Everybody on this earth in the past, everybody. There was no hunter-gatherers. So hunter-gatherers, you're going back, several 100,000 years maybe or something like that. But then after that, everybody knew how to grow things. It's the easiest thing in the world. Doesn't anybody see that?
Yes. Okay, I have two questions. You guys are getting me really involved. So far involved, I think I'm having paranormal experiences talking to you guys. And anyways, I was thinking, I asked Harry about, do you think that they created stone? And paleo.
I don't think so. Not in this instance. You could talk about several sites around the world, like Peru and Egypt and Turkey and Japan and other places where you find these megalithic constructions, but we're not talking about the same time periods. I think all those were later time periods. These walls, the walls of New England, are from a much earlier time period, probably after a cataclysm or a catastrophe of some sort that these people went ahead and built these walls. And it's very interesting, and I've said it many times, even though these walls are not what you would call polygonal stone walls, where they cut and shape the rocks to fit in perfectly, 100% seamless fit, etc. But they are similar in two ways, because I've gone over this on my channel as well, is in order to build a wall, you have to have a lot of stone available to you. And what you're attempting to do is fit random stones that are irregularly shaped into each other in such a way that they fit as best as they can. It's like a puzzle. And I've said it many times, right, Jimmy? I've said it many times that the walls are like a puzzle.
Yeah, the stone
You have
belongs in
to,
that one spot in the wall.
right. I mean, you
And
could sit there building a wall and then, you have a pile of stones behind you. You're going to pick the stone out of that pile of stones that best fits into the next course
and they
or
shaped
level
they
of
shaped a
wall that you're
lot of
going to
them.
build.
They shaped a lot of them also.
Right, and when they needed to, maybe they found a stone that was approximately fit in there. What they would do is they would assist it a little bit by chiseling off an edge or whatever it is in order to make it fit. So they were adjusting it in sort of a crude and primitive way, but the stone walls themselves are almost like a form of polygonal stone construction because they're like puzzles. And as I said, you have to have a lot of stone available to you in one place. The way that mainstream makes us think about it is that these farmers, made clearing piles, and then from these clearing piles, they built stone walls. But if you were to build them without taking the time to fit the stones in there the right way or whatever it is, they would just fall down on the ground. And as Jimmy says, that's not the case. These walls were built to last. So it takes some time. It takes a great deal of time. It takes almost extra effort as opposed to building a wall of like brick or construction block where everything's nice and square and trim and everything. It takes a little bit of extra time to create the wall. So you're taking additional times building walls that almost seems unnecessary if that was just strictly the purpose of the walls. And again, these walls, most of the walls are only 1, 2, 3 feet high. Okay. And also, while you guys are talking, Harry had mentioned there was a wall only like 1 foot high that stretched for like a half a mile or something like that. You got to understand something too, that a lot of these walls have been cannibalized. And when they cannibalized the wall, they often took the stone that was within their ability to carry. And what they did was they left a lot of the larger stones that were in the courses of the walls because they were too big. So what you'll see is the remnants of an old wall, which stretches for, hundreds of feet, miles, whatever it is. But that's because it was cannibalized. It was either used to create other stone walls or was used for road fill in many instances, okay? And what you see is the traces of a small wall, but that's not the way it was built. It's been broken down and repurposed again, see? So when you see a stone wall in the woods that looks like it's like 1 foot high, it doesn't look like it's well built, whatever it is, a good chance that it's probably been cannibalized.
You can find out more by searching for Stonewall Research, Budcat 7, or Paleo Mountain Man on YouTube.